When Miriam graduated from college in 2019, her future looked bright. She had landed an internship in media, moved to New York City, and she joined a theater troupe where she quickly found community. Just months later, the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and then in early 2023, a relationship ended, she got laid off, and anxiety set in. Now 26 years old and back in school for social work, Miriam doesn't feel very young and carefree. She says, not knowing what your future is going to look like in a world where nobody knows what the collective future is going to look like, to say the least, is overwhelming. Young adults in America, like Miriam, are reporting higher stress levels than older generations. 18 to 34-year-olds are saying their average stress level is a 6 out of 10, compared with 3.4 among people 65 and older. Last year, this younger cohort said that their average stress level was 5.8. My own children are now in their late 20s, and like many of their generation, they are somewhat soured on the world that those of us, boomers, many of us in this room are boomers, have left them. They wonder what we have done about the world in which climate change goes unchecked. They wonder about the obsession with personal morality over our care for shared resources. They think that America has done little to tide the issue of gun violence and are statistically more in favor of stricter gun laws than boomers and olders. Millennials face increased rich-poor wealth gaps, and that is a great increase over those of us who are boomers. And they are pessimistic about significant changes in the prospects of any of those things I just mentioned. Political instability ranks high as a concern for our young people as well. Financial worries are their greatest concerns, with about 36% of them worrying about that significantly, and 34% of them naming political instability as a worry. Now, I've been thinking a lot about how to get my head into the mindset of first-century people in Judea, and I wonder if perhaps our young people in this generation and culture might help us understand what it was like then. Because it was truly a dreadful time in history, a troubled and tumultuous time in the land of Judea. The political world was in turmoil, with Herod's growing paranoia and mental instability, which was scandalous among other rulers and religious heads. Shortly after Herod died, people assembled to demand their new ruler punish those who had been Herod's favorites, and they also wanted to reduce taxes. Now, we aren't sure, actually, whether Jesus was born in the time of Herod or shortly thereafter, But no matter what, it was a hard time for your average person way back then, and they were full of worries. So what about this Mary, whose voice comes to us today? She is scandalously pregnant. Perhaps she goes off to see her cousin Elizabeth to get away from all the stress and the disapproval. It's even possible that her family sent her away for 3 months so that they could negotiate with Joseph around the intended betrothal, with her out of sight of the gossips around in the area. The blessing for Mary is that in Elizabeth's company, she is finally able to get into the joy of her pregnancy. And more than that, she is able to express a universal hope that is so gilded with God's reversals of fortune and studded with God's good promises. She, humble handmaiden, knows herself finally to be loved and exalted by God. And she sings of that revolutionary love of God that comes to her in this time of great difficulty in her world and this time of great difficulty in her personal life. This love is expansive. It's far beyond expressing something about their hopes for her own well-being or the well-being of her child. It expresses something about this universal lift that will happen with this birth. Her words channel the activities of God's love and the power of God's hope to all of us. Mary calls us all back to holy love, even when things are difficult. That love that we receive from God and that we take in and are able to transmute into a call to live into God's hopes for the way that our world will be. That love which cannot limit itself to domestic interests or individualized concerns, but breaks into the wholeness of communities, societies, and peoples. It's really an amazing expression, given where Mary was in her time and place. And we might hear those words for ourselves and for our young folk who may feel heavily the burdens of this time. I think back to Miriam, the young woman I mentioned at the beginning. Mary's voice convicts me. What love and what forms of love can I practice to make the world a better place for her and for my children? How can Mary's hope and love sing through all of us and through our community? How can we express that hope that God's activity is still very much present? How can we be the living love of God?